Right, hello and welcome to the first episode of the Goalpost podcast. In today's episode, we'll be diving into some deep analysis on the concept of the FA Cup being played abroad. I'm joined today by our Goalpost team, Corey, Jay and Nat. Hello guys, how are you?
Hello, mate.
Not bad.
All good, mate.
Not bad.
Right, we're going to start off simply. Who is for and who is against the idea of the FA Cup being played abroad?
I'm for
Definitely
that.
against
I'm
it,
all
mate.
for it.
Definitely against it.
All for it.
So Nat's the only one
You're
against
for
it.
it now.
No, Nat's the only one for it. My fault.
Yep,
Um,
for it, mate.
What's your main reason for being for it then?
Well, look, we all want the league to be more entertaining, more exciting. We want all these improvements. How are you going to make these improvements if you don't have the money? The only way you get that money is by getting that big, foreign money, sell it into English football, and play the FA Cup abroad.
But the FA Cup has been part of English football heritage for the last 200 odd years. How can you
It's the
take
oldest trophy in football, and you want to move it abroad.
Yeah, well,
So are you going to go watch them abroad? If your team go FA Cup final, are you going to go abroad?
I'd travel abroad, yeah.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. The FA Cup, the English Cup, we're going to go play out in Spain.
Yeah.
Away from England.
Well, ideally, you'd want somewhere like Saudi where the money's big.
Oh,
So you would
okay.
travel to Saudi to watch Spurs in the third round of the FA Cup.
I would travel anywhere to watch my team in a final because I don't get it very often, mate.
You'll be
Well.
playing. You might be playing, say, Wycombe Wanderers in the third round of the cup. Are you expecting Wycombe's fans to go out all the way to Saudi Arabia to see their team possibly get battered 5-0 by a Premier League?
No. I think only the final and the semi-final should be played abroad, like they do in Spain.
Okay.
Okay, but doesn't that take away from the beauty of it being at Wembley and Wembley having its sort of hold over the game?
Yeah, but I think a lot of the beauty of the game's been taken away already. So why stop? Why stop now? What's that? Sorry.
So you'd like to ruin it even further?
I don't think it would ruin it as much as people think it would. I think when you look at the actual ticket allocations, more so with European competitions, but a lot of it is given to advertisers of the competition and things like that. So a lot of the tickets that you're seeing are actually corporate tickets, and a lot of the fans don't get to go anyway. So they're going to be watching it on TV either way.
Nat.
So you're going to make. Yep.
I just want to prove a point, right? So we're going to send English fans into a country, and let's say let's for example say Tottenham win the FA Cup, right? You're going to have a Saudi country filled with drunk English have you ever took into account that the country might not want it as much as it brings money, especially in a Muslim country.
Saudi Arabia will want it.
Yeah, agree, but you're in a Muslim country, for example.
They're trying to increase their footballing stature, and what better way to increase it than getting the FA Cup?
Yeah, but they're not going to want alcohol in stadiums, are they?
There it is. I've got a sentence from a tweet online. It says, "The FA Cup is deeply rooted in English football history, and playing it abroad could see us depart from tradition and dilution of its identity." Nat, what do you make of that?
It's true.
Do you care about the tradition and the identity of the FA Cup?
Yeah, I do. As I said, I think sport is getting dragged down every season. It's becoming worse every season, and the only way that you're going to make it better is with money. You need to get the money from somewhere. And even if you're only playing 2 or 3, maybe the next 5 FA Cup finals are in Saudi Arabia. You make all that money. You make a 5-year deal. You make loads of money. And you bring it back to England after 5 years.
Okay, fair, but here's a point. They scrapped the FA Cup replays, right? So because
that was a big problem, by the way. A massive problem for the smaller clubs.
Exactly. No money going into the lower teams, and they were seeing it as a big problem. And you take it, because the players were too tired to play 2 games and it was pointless. They'd rather just go to extra time. But if they're too tired to play a replay, in Stevenage, are they not too tired to fly to Saudi Arabia?
Fly across the world.
And what, for a midweek game when they might have a big game on the weekend?
Well, listen. The issue with replays being scrapped was the fact that if you went, for example, Spurs versus Tamworth this year, held on 0-0 at home. If they came away to us, they would have made so much. They would have made even more money than they already did. So that was the issue with it. You take it to Saudi and you get all this Saudi money, can then make the prize pool of the competition bigger, and then these smaller clubs will also benefit because they are also getting a bigger prize pot. They're fighting for a bigger prize pot.
But I doubt there are any fans already out in Saudi Arabia that support Tamworth.
Will, you might be the man for this.
Yep.
How many games in a championship do they play on a midweek with like FA Cup during, if they're involved? Roughly.
In terms of FA Cup, is usually at the weekend, but Carabao Cup games are midweek.
But as a championship team,
during the season, you play around 15 to 20 midweek games.
So not only are you shipping them out abroad, probably midweek or on the weekend.
Yeah.
They might have a game on the Thursday.
Yeah.
And let's say
the question would be ridiculous, and the fact that the travelling time to go halfway across the world would take a whole day. So would you rather train for the day, or would you rather sit on a plane for the day?
Or spend 3 hours going up to Saudi and then you get smashed 5-0.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you've got City as Tamworth. You know you're an underdog. You're probably not going to win. You're just excited to go that far. You got to go 3 hours up the road. Well, 3 hours to Saudi to get smashed 5-0 that you know you're going to lose, and then come back and play the game the following day.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work, mate.
There's not enough money. I mean, if the FA were willing to pay for all the accommodation, flights of fans, flights of teams, everything, then maybe it would work. But they'd lose every bit of profit they'd make from taking it.
I just want to say as well, if you remember how much stick United got for moving away from Old Trafford to their new stadium, and how we're losing all our heritage because we're moving away from Old Trafford, you're taking one of the biggest English competitions out of England.
Well, look, you look at the story of Wimbledon. You look at the story of Wimbledon and MK Dons. I mean, they took the club and moved it 60 miles north, and that was a massive problem. Yeah. They lost a fan base, and that was just 60 miles. You're looking at going halfway across the world here for a prestigious tournament that has been held in this country ever since it started and is only inclusive of England teams. So if you had Saudi teams in it, and it was a Saudi tournament, I'd get moving it. I'd get it being.
Have you ever also thought that teams might not take it as serious now with it being out of England? If you've got more important games, like you're still in the Champions League, for example, and you have important games coming up, are you going to want to travel all the way up to Saudi maybe 3 nights before you play a Champions League game?
Exactly. I mean, for the lower teams and the bigger teams, I believe it'll be a problem. The only positives I could see it from is commercially, maybe, like, because Saudi has, like you say, the financial side of things.
Yeah.
But then the travel and cost of everything else would almost balance that out. And then, other than that, if there's fans that are closer and have supported them all their life and they're the other side of the world, they get to see them play. But they have that in pre-season. I know it's not a competitive game.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying, like, let's say, for the bigger clubs, it's okay for like United and stuff like that because there is a lot of fans out abroad, right? But the thing what I can't wrap my head around is, okay, sure, you're gonna go get loads of fans that have really wanted to come. Is that not what Champions League and Europa are for? So that the fans abroad can come watch them closer.
Exactly. I mean, we put a tweet out on our Twitter page asking for questions for our episode of the podcast, and we got one from Only One Dons saying that surely flights are too expensive for loyal supporters to make the journey, and would kickoff times be at a ridiculous time?
Yeah,
which is fair.
No
difference. They'd be kicking off at about 1 o'clock in the morning.
And no one's staying up for that.
Especially in Australia or something like that.
Look at the attendances in Saudi for their own Premier League. Do you think they're going to turn up for Stevenage against Barrow in the first round of the cup?
It's a good point.
But you go back to Nat's point of it being the semi-final and the final. Isn't that the most important part of the tournament? Why would you move that away from?
If
having
anything,
it?
you should have kept them
should be
two
at Wembley.
stages in Wembley.
That's the heritage of English football.
You're going
It should
to
be at
the
Wembley.
biggest stadium in England, arguably one of the best stadiums around the world. No, I'd argue Wembley is.
Yeah.
And you're going to take one of the biggest English competitions away from it.
Yeah, I don't think.
I just want to go back.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to your point about the ridiculous kickoff times. In Spain, when they play their semi-final and their final, in Saudi Arabia, it kicks off at 10 p.m. local time in Spain. So you're not going to be.
That's my bedtime. I'll be honest.
I don't believe that for a second, mate. But look,
but then again, if you're kicking off at 10, you're finishing in close to midnight. I don't know what travel in Saudi, but if you've got a hotel about an hour away and you've got to get a train,
no, it's 10 p.m. in Spain, not 10 p.m. in Saudi.
Sorry, what time in Saudi would that be?
It's a great question.
It's
mate.
got to be
I
right.
You can convert that for us quick now.
In terms of when you look at fights, boxing fights that happen in Saudi, it's always like 3 hours in front, I think. So it would be you're looking at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and then ending at about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Do you think fans are home at 3 o'clock?
That's the type of thing you do for a boxing fight, not a.
I think if your team's won the FA Cup and you're in a foreign country, you're going to enjoy you're going to want to enjoy the culture. You're going to want to enjoy everything. So I don't think.
I mean, you'd know all about this being a Spurs fan. What if you lose the final?
Then you find other ways in Saudi to enjoy yourself, or you go home straight to bed. It's
I just want to say though,
you've got options there.
Yeah, sounds great, mate.
do you know how much of a big thing last year's FA Cup was when we went through? Right, when United went through to City in the FA Cup, it was one of the most insane things. In Wembley, you had two Manchester teams travelling down to the biggest stadium in the world. Not only that, but we did go and win. But do you know what I mean?
Well said, mate.
It was the biggest event in England at the moment.
The one where Amad Diallo against Liverpool in the last minute.
Yeah.
The atmosphere.
Yeah.
You think same atmosphere?
You wouldn't have that sort of atmosphere in Saudi Arabia for any.
Also,
Absolutely not.
imagine the ticket prices. Because would they not be obviously I'm not saying but they spend money in Saudi. I'm sure they could spend a lot to fill most of that stadium, right? But
adding on
half of that won't be full.
It's more the travel.
The fans.
But I don't think the ticket prices would be that much because Saudi.
Yeah, but it's more the travel prices, not so much the tickets.
If you're looking at Wembley prices, you're getting about £90 a ticket. If you're looking at flight prices to Saudi Arabia,
it's ridiculous money to go to Saudi.
Okay, well, I think we've discussed it into a good bit of depth there. I don't think there's any change in Nat's mind, but
you're not changing his mind, mate.
We've had very good arguments and points across. But anyway, this has been the first episode of the Goalpost podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Corey, Jay, and Nat for a good argument.
Very welcome, mate.
Thank you and goodbye.